For our last object, let's talk a little bit about a daguerreotype. Now let's take a look at this image of this woman. Now you see her seated with her elbow on a book. It's been placed on the table. Her hand is stretched out. And her image is contained within a hinged union case, which is what they were called. And behind her image, you see an advertisement. So let's take a closer look at that as well. You see that it's called Genuine Union Case, and then you see dates on there for patent dates, 1854 and 1855. Now let's just jump right in. So using those dates, do we think this object was probably made within the mid-1850s? Which is interesting, considering the fact that on some research that I've compiled, popularity of the daguerreotype waned in the 1850s when the ambrotype was developed. It was a faster, less expensive photographic process. Now, that's very interesting. So what does this also tell us about that woman? Where did she live? Did she live in a more rural area when the daguerreotype pushed through that area? And why did she sit for this image? But let's kind of pop back. So the daguerreotype process was invented in France in 1839. So it makes its way over the United States. Now take a look at this image. You can see that it's reflective, right? And it reflects like a mirror. In order to view the image, you really have to tilt it at 45 degrees. Otherwise, the silver-coated copper plate is often so shiny, you can actually see yourself in the image. Now, daguerreotypes are really the first commercially viable image. Can you imagine seeing yourself in a daguerreotype for the first time, not just in a portrait that was painted by some traveling itinerant artist? That's actually very fascinating. And can you imagine how that changed the world at this time and opened up the world to other people who haven't really been able to see people possibly? But let's go back a little bit and talk about the questions pertinent to the image. So let's look at the image one more time. Take a closer look at her. What can we look at these portraits and question about the sitter and their social status? Who was the person behind the lens? How did they learn their trade? Who made the case? Who was this woman? Why did she pose for this image? Was the donor somehow related to this person? Do we have any sort of paperwork to understand who this person was? But what can we ascertain on this woman's identity based on looking at the image? What can we infer on her based on her dress for her social status? What can we infer on her dress based on the time period? Could we potentially date this daguerreotype based on her clothing and her hairstyles? And maybe the advertisement behind the image and the popularity of the daguerreotype in that era? And utilizing other research compiled by my peers and other scholars who really study daguerreotypes in early photography. Now keep asking these questions and maybe you'll come up with some too.